G'day, my name's Josh, and in this video I'm going to quickly give you a bit of an overview of a talk that I gave at two different conferences last year. One was at AISA Cyber Conference, and the other one was at BSides Melbourne, both in 2024. And I've decided to record a video for this, so that way if anyone was unable to see that, or perhaps you're online somewhere else in the world, maybe this will be of value and maybe you'll find it interesting. The talk that I'm going to be giving is called To Pentester and Beyond, and it's about my journey into the cybersecurity realm, going and aiming to become a pentester, and then what is available kind of beyond that, what roles are available after that. I think a lot of the time pentesting is this really popular, really exciting role that people always really want to get to, but no one really talks about what you can do after you've been a pentester if you decide to move on and move into a different position, what's available. So hopefully I'll cover a little bit of that here. Alongside that, I'll also include my salaries and a bit of a brief description of what my job actually was in each of the positions that I was in. And yeah, we'll go from there. So a quick agenda. So we're just going to quickly cover off a bit of a who am I, why I'm here, why I'm kind of making this video. We'll talk about the career progression that I have going into and becoming a pentester. I'll do a brief talk on both conferences and certificates. I'll kind of add a little bit of some details in there about how to best take advantage of those different things. And then we'll talk about beyond pen testing, what's kind of available, my experience after getting hired after pen testing, some roles that I came across, the pros and cons when I thought about those, and then also just include some fun tips at the end. So a quick who am I? My name's Josh. I go by the handle of Old Mate, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. So hopefully this will provide a bit of guidance. If you are global or you're elsewhere, all of the numbers will be in Australian dollars. And so yeah, this is I haven't changed the slides since. So this is my first time recording this video. So that way it'll be alive on the internet. And right now I'm a sales engineer at HackerBox. I've been here for just under 2 years. I think my 2 years will be in April, so almost at 2 years now. I also own a mechanical keyboard shop where I design and manufacture mechanical keyboards, and that is called Mountain Keyboards, or MTN KBD. Alongside that, I like to climb rocks, I like to hike, I like to do anything that I can do to get me away from computers, and yeah, I've got a lot of passion in getting away from them. So yeah, I also run a little side thing called the Hacker Blood Drive. If you're in Australia and you are interested in donating blood or plasma, if you decide to do that, I will give you a subscription to either Hack the Box or Pentester Labs, whatever you're interested in. So yeah, you can look that up if you're interested, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about going into pen testing. So I have a bit of a different route, I think, than what most people do, especially nowadays. I didn't go to university. I didn't go study cybersecurity. I went to TAFE, and I did that within this first role here. So I worked as an information technology support officer, I think was my official title. And essentially I was the IT support person at a school. So depending on how old you are, you may remember having an IT person that was just kind of running around fixing things at your school. Maybe they were fixing projectors, maybe they were fixing TVs, maybe they were fixing just computers in general. So really could be a bit of a mix. That's what I did for 2 years. So I did that at a school here in Sydney, where I fixed printers, MacBooks, and then did other general maintenance. Alongside that, I was at TAFE, which is, for those who are outside of Australia, it's like a community college, kind of like a supplementary, not more hands-on university, if you will, or college. And yeah, so I just kind of got a general certificate in that space. I found this role through the internship, and the reason why I've kind of got that included there is each of the roles I'll actually include how I found them and then the salary that I was on, except for my current salary. For that, you'll have to go ahead and ask me in person, or yeah, maybe we can talk about that. But I won't be including it here. So the the reason why I'm including kind of how I found the roles, I think it's quite interesting, and I think that it will help give you a bit of an idea of how you can find potential jobs in the cybersecurity market. So the first salary that I was on was at 35,000 Australian dollars plus super. So this was, I believe, just below the minimum wage, or maybe at the minimum wage. I'm not 100% sure. But I did that for 2 years. I started in 2017, I want to say, end of 2017. And yeah, so after that, I then was in that role for 2 years, and then I moved into an IT support officer. This was for a medical company, where I went and decided to move jobs, and this time I got a little bit more hands-on. I got much more technical interface to deal with. While I was also fixing printers and fixing computers, I was also managing Active Directory. I was getting hands-on in server infrastructure, building and installing updates on different machines, and really getting a lot more hands-on tools. So that was quite enjoyable. And this one this role I found through Seek. So I found it through there and I applied. Seek is just a job hunting platform here in Australia. This role I was on 45,000 Australian dollars plus super. So a little bit of a pay bump, a little 10k pay bump. So pretty fortunate there. Then shortly after, maybe about a year and a half maybe, I got a promotion. So I was picking up a lot of extra tasks and doing a lot of other things. And I got the role of a security administrator. Realistically, the title didn't quite match up to the role, but I was fortunate enough to get that in my title as well. It gave me a bit of extra ability to do other things. And this was essentially a system admin role. So, the same stuff of help desk, fixing printers, automating the boring things. I learned a lot of PowerShell in this position to actually automate a lot of the stuff. And then I also got to play around with a bunch of cool security tools. I got to play around with some firewalls. I got to implement Elastic Stack, some Pi-holes. I really had a good fun playing around with those tools on the clock. And that I was actually promoted internally. So that wasn't with any other business. That was within the company itself. And with that, I got a lovely little pay bump as well, which we always love to see. I ended up on 60,000 plus super. And I was in that position for, I believe, another year after that. I think in total, at that medical company, I was there for 2.5 years. And about a year in, or a year before, I decided, hey, I want to find a new position. I want to get into this cybersecurity stuff. At this point, I'd been going to conferences quite a bit, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But I thought cybersecurity sounds fun, pen testing sounds pretty cool, and I put in a lot of work. I spent a bunch of time, and I ended up doing a bunch of Hack the Box, and also doing my OSCP. And then I managed to arrive and achieve myself a associate security consultant position, which is super exciting. This is my first pen testing role. It was at a consultancy, and I was doing a lot of web application and external pen tests. I spent a lot of time focusing on that, and really just consistently getting more jobs. I've got a little note here saying consultancy equals the meat grinder. It is consultancies. If you've not worked in one, there is quite a lot of work that gets pushed through, but it is consistent. You will always have more work to do, and it's good because you get to learn quite a lot. But it can also get quite tiring as you don't have much break in between each job. So it's very good in some ways, less good in others. Beggars can't be choosers. This was my first role, so I was super excited. And this role I actually found through friends that I met through conferences. I now, at the time when this position came up, I knew quite a few people at this business, at this company, and I met them all through conferences and meetups in cybersecurity. And I was very fortunate to be talking to some people at a bar one evening, and they said, hey, we've got a junior role opening up. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. How do I how do I get an interview? And I ended up getting referred into the business, and I got an interview, and for some reason they hired me. How good. I'm very fortunate. So after spending a little bit of time there, I think it was in total a year, I got hired on at 50,000 plus super, which, if you note, is actually a little bit of a decrease. So I did lose 10k, but it was a small price to pay. I think probation was 3 months. And then I got bumped back up to what I was at, which was 60k plus super. But now I'm in a new field, a new fun adventure, and a new job. So I actually really enjoyed that, and I'm grateful, even though I did take a little bit of a pay cut to get here. After about a year, I did decide to leave this consultancy, and I ended up moving to another consultancy. With this title, I got rid of the associate position, and I ended up getting the security consultant role. So this is like your pen tester, I guess. That's kind of the default. That's what you would kind of expect. And this is my second pen tester role. This was with a different organization. However, it was still a consultancy. So I did have that, but it was great. Different consultancy, new year, new me, new consultancy, new me, whatever. And this was awesome because I got to do a bunch of other different work. So not only was I doing web and external, I was then doing internal, mobile, Wi-Fi, and then I was also fortunate enough to do a physical red team as well. So quite a lot of fun, quite a lot of different roles, different stuff. Still in that meat grinder of consultancies, but still learning. I learned a lot in that position. Very fortunate for that, and had a really good time. Met a lot of really good people that I still consider friends. So this position I actually found through Slack. I was actually referred through a conference friend, or a friend that I met at conferences is probably the better way to say this. And the person who referred me was unable to hire when I started looking for potentially another job. He was unable to hire me in his team, so he actually referred me to another person, which reached out to me through Slack and had a position available, and I ended up joining that company. So that's how I kind of landed this. It was just through word of mouth. A really awesome opportunity where, yeah, just meeting people ended up turning into a position. So this actually got a pretty nice pay bump. So pretty stoked for this one when this came through. I ended up getting 90k plus super, and I was there for about a year, and then I got promoted, and with that I got an extra 10k. So hey, can't go wrong with that. Can't complain. Now, one thing I will highlight before we move into the conferences and talk about some other bits and pieces. I own a mechanical keyboard store. Now, I'm not here to sell you mechanical keyboards. I'm not here to talk about that very often. But I will highlight this because I think this is quite interesting and quite relevant. And it highlights a really interesting point where in cybersecurity, no matter what background you come from, no matter what what your previous history is, what roles you've worked in, I think there's often always some kind of element that you will be able to draw from and apply in a cybersecurity position. So this is something that I always tell people is like, don't rush to get into cybersecurity. Work in a help desk, work in whatever position. You'll make your way into cybersecurity at some point, and then everything you've learned on the way, that'll kind of come in together, and you'll be golden. You'll really enjoy that. So the keyboard shop that I own, I design these keyboards, I get them manufactured in China, and then I sell them. So I have an understanding of business, I have an understanding of sales, an understanding of marketing. Now, this is not to say that I do these things well. You'll soon see that I do not do these well. But when I was getting hired for the job, they didn't have to know that. No, but it helps having this experience, right? And so in this job, I did all of that. And then I also still fix printers. Unfortunately, no matter where I go in life, it seems that printers will always need to be fixed. And whenever that is the case, I'm the person who has to fix them. But I just want to highlight this. Everything helps in cybersecurity. I'll come back to this point. You'll see shortly. Now, if you're wondering how much money I make from selling these keyboards, it's a lot. It's negative a lot. I lose a lot. It's not a good time. So yeah, don't try and do that. But it did help me get my current position. So anyways, conferences. Now, I love conferences. I'm a big fan. I come from the way I got into the community, into the scene, into the cybersecurity space was through conferences and meetups. So I was very fortunate to get in through that way, and I've met a lot of wonderful people that way. But let's have a quick talk about them. Conferences are everywhere. BSides runs in so many cities now, it's insane. If you're in Australia, there is like one in every city, every state, and they're everywhere. If you get a chance, definitely check them out. If you can go to them, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking to get into cybersecurity. I probably spent about 4 years going to these conferences before I got into it. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm saying that's what I did, and I will help you learn from my mistakes, and you'll get into the scene quicker. Actually get a job quicker is what I mean. But one thing I will highlight here is volunteer. Volunteer if you can. It's one, if you volunteer at a conference, you get a free ticket, which is great, especially if you're a student. It helps to add stuff onto your resume. It's also just a wonderful way to meet people. A lot of the people that you will be interacting with at these conferences, specifically in the domain of putting on these conferences, are actually probably in the cybersecurity space or are just really passionate about it. And so they're going to be great people to meet. Now, I'm not saying that you want to meet people specifically so you can find a job. That's not what I want you to take away from this. And if you've ever met someone who is in this situation where they want something from you, they're only meeting you so they can get something, you know exactly what I mean. It's not a good time. I'm just saying you should try and meet people because you never know what will happen later in life. You never know, 5 years from now, they might help you with a position, or maybe you work with them or whatever, who knows. The people that you'll meet at these conferences, from my perspective, I've always found the broad majority are really cool people. They're just passionate about something that is cybersecurity and fixing a lot of problems in the world. So definitely recommend it if you get a chance to go to these and meet people there. Now, one thing I will note, this bottom point here, this is something that I wish I could tell my younger self, but alas, it doesn't really matter. Going to conferences isn't enough. Just going there and then attending is great. You get to meet people, you get to talk to people, you get to ask them about like what their job is, what their day-to-day looks like. That's all really good and well, but you need to put in work you need to put in work additionally, right? If you're interested in cybersecurity, if you're interested in pen testing, you've got to be doing something to push you into that field. You know, I spent many years kind of sitting in the help desk position being like, I want to do cybersecurity, and going to these conferences and then not doing any additional study or understanding outside of that. So this is something that, you know, I guess I'm trying to tell my younger self, but yeah, going to these things is great. Take that momentum, that energy that comes from going to a conference and get that excitement and put that into meaning, put that into work. Maybe do some hack the box, do some pentester labs, do some cybersecurity stuff, build something, play with a tool. Who knows? There's so much you could do. Write a blog. That's what I would recommend. So that's just a brief thing on conferences. Certificates. This is super brief. I'm not really going to talk about it too much. They're not everything, but they can help get past HR. The big one is the OSCP. Especially if you're trying to get in pen testing, having those 4 letters, I don't know what happens. It's like you put those in LinkedIn and then recruiters start hitting you up all the time. So definitely recommend getting those. And I also would recommend the CPTS. I work for Hack the Box, so it's a little bit biased. I'm not here to sell you that. I just think that the way that we teach things is super useful. So yeah, that's super cool. So beyond consulting, where is the next thing? So at this point, I was at consultancies. I was at 2 different consultancies for about 3.5, 4 years almost. And I was kind of looking for like something else that wasn't a meat grinder. I was looking for something different, and I kind of wanted to have a look around and see what else was around. So I kind of had this same moment of like, cool, what is the next thing? What's the next adventure for me? I'd been doing this for a little bit, and I'd thought, what about a third consultancy? You know, first one didn't work. Second one was pretty good, but then it, changed. And then maybe a third one will be the answer, right? Like, what about third consultancy? And I thought about this a lot. I spoke to a consultancy, another one who I was really interested in working with, and then inevitably chose a different path. But still a great business to work for, and maybe one day, who knows. But I then also could go down the route of an internal pen testing role. Now, this is originally what I was hoping for when I started to go out to market and have a look around. Unfortunately, when I was looking for a new position, this was the time when layoffs were happening in big tech. And most of the time, the companies that had internal pen testing roles were basically big tech. It was pretty rare that smaller companies were going to have an internal pen tester. So at the time, the roles just really didn't exist, and they were pretty hard to come by. So I kind of was like, I don't think this is really going to be I don't think I'm going to have much luck there. I could go down the DevOps and secure coding route. That was something I was definitely exploring and having a look at. And I'll show you kind of some of those job roles and positions as they came up. And then the last one was not something that I was expecting. If you told me I was gonna be in sales after this consultancy role, I would have told you there's no way. I have no idea what you're talking about. But the right opportunity kind of popped up, and it seemed like a cool position. But we'll talk about that shortly. Okay, so let's go through each of those, look at pros and cons, and talk about that. So first off, third consultancy, right? 1 and 2 didn't work, but let's try 3. The pros for that, I was going to get a little pay bump, a little 20k pay bump, not bad. Pretty happy with that. That would have been really good. This was actually a position that I was offered, so this was kind of like, it was already on the table. I was going to have new and exciting work potentially. Maybe some more red teams, which I was really enjoying. So I was like, cool, that'd be really fun to do more of those. The better team and culture, potentially. Who knows? The culture that I had in my previous, the second consultancy was actually quite good. But who knows? Maybe there's another avenue. So maybe there's more. The cons, obviously meat grinder again, going through that process of consultancies. It's part of it. It's part of the trade. But who knows, maybe it wouldn't be as bad. And then finally, the last con would be it was hard to see the impact and outcomes. Now, at 3.5 years or 4 years, this was definitely something that I was thinking about a lot. I felt like a lot of my work had no impact, and so obviously that's not really what you want to feel, especially in your day-to-day job. And so that was like a con that I was really weighing up. And so yeah, we move on to the next thing. So internal pen tester. This would be a really cool thing. The pro would be understanding the full process from bug to fix. Now, this is something that I've really been interested in. The same point of having no impact. This is where I would actually see full impact, understand the real impact of these bugs and why these matter. And there, I'd actually find some more impactful bugs. So that's a really cool pro. We get to be in a fun new environment, and then maybe some longer engagements, which I also really enjoy, really diving deep into a lot of this code and finding things. The cons were, obviously I mentioned before, hard to find those roles, especially in the time that I was looking. And another con would be maybe the environment will get stale over time. Maybe you're dealing with the same infrastructure again and again. I don't know. I hadn't been there. This is just kind of what I'd heard previously from other positions. So then I was looking around the avenue of the secure DevOps or secure coding route. Now, this is something that was super interesting. I was kind of looking to dive into this, and I had a couple of different opportunities. I had two or three opportunities where they had offered me a position. And so the salary there was obviously 140 to 160. It was pretty good. That's a really good salary. I had one position that was offering me 160. When I declined, they actually they came back to me and said, how much more would you need for you to accept? So I have no idea how much they would actually take, or how much that role would have actually been pushed for. But this just kind of gives you an example. There's a lot of money in that space, so if you're chasing the money, could go there. Another pro, understanding the full process from bug to fix, very similar to internal pen testing, could be really cool. I'd get to develop coding skills, which is something that I've definitely been interested in. And I'd get to understand, these bugs inside and out. If I find a vulnerability, I get to understand exactly why that happens in our code, and then maybe then really find more of those over time. And also hands-on time with devs, teaching them, making them understand, teaching them how, like, why these bugs matter and stuff like that. That's really cool. So I was thinking about that as well. Cons for that, though, obviously not breaking stuff as often. Although I mentioned before the consultancy meat grinder, you're constantly breaking things, you're constantly finding vulnerabilities, which is a lot of fun. So, this position you wouldn't be finding as much. And you'd be primarily working on web bugs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you really like web. I also really enjoyed infrastructure, so that was like a trade-off that I was thinking about, not necessarily applicable to everyone. Then the opportunity for a sales engineer came up. Now, like I said, this is not a position that I was looking for. I had no idea this role even existed. And on LinkedIn, there was a position that came up for Hack the Box, which is the current company that I work for. I applied for it and kind of thought, hey, there's probably no chance. I don't really sell, but maybe. So I applied for it. And then I was doing the pros and cons, right? So the same thing. Pros, working with a company that helped me get into cybersecurity. So I used Hack the Box a bunch to get into pen testing, so that was like a really cool kind of thing, and I had like a bit of a personal attachment with the company, which is fun, or the platform, I should say. I'd also get to use their education platform in downtime for upskilling, which is like really cool, really fun. I get to talk a lot about the cool cybersecurity things. I get to talk about the new things that we've brought out and whatnot, which is cool. And pro, being in sales, it has some pros, but as you can see in the right-hand column here, it also has some negatives as well. So depending on how you look at things, being in sales is good, but also can be bad. And another con there was that I wouldn't be breaking things as often. So that's just kind of the trade-off. I ended up picking sales engineer here. And so I had a few offers from different secure coding companies, as I mentioned. And the overall thing that I just couldn't really get over is like the role just didn't quite fit what I was interested in at the time. And I ended up finding this, and my ultimate kind of decision was, it seemed like a pretty cool company, seemed like a fun place to work for. I had this mentality of, if I can sell keyboards, although I don't really sell them well, then surely I can sell software. So I was completely wrong. I can't sell keyboards or software, but I'm trying my best. And so this is something that, I kind of thought about, and it kind of made sense. I also use their product to get into pen testing, so I thought that'd be a really cool thing to mention when I'm talking about the platform. So that's like a fun little thing. And I thought it would be a good experience for future goals. So I'm hoping one day in my future there will be an opportunity for me to open my own business, perhaps one that's a bit more successful. But I have some kind of business in sales or software or some kind of thing. Who knows? Maybe in cybersecurity. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to understand a bit more about the sales cycle, how to sell things, and what's the best avenue for me to kind of go through that. And so why not learn that while I'm with the team and people who can support me, so I can understand that whole scale of how that all plays out. We are not going to play Guess My Current Salary. That I will not give you on a video, unfortunately. However, if you see me at a conference, please come up and talk to me, and maybe I'll tell you then. So, some tips. Here's just kind of like some final things that I would definitely recommend. So, first off, website blogs. I am a big fan of these. Just start something up. They're relatively simple. I use my website with a thing called Hugo, and it is a static, what's the term? Static page website where all of it gets posted to GitHub, and then it just gets sent over and posted on a web application called Hugo. So definitely recommend checking that out. Have a blog, put some stuff on there. Who knows? You might write something that you're working on, something that you think is really cool and fun, and someone might see that. You might be able to get a position from that. Who knows? You really just don't know what will happen And I find that once you might be thinking, oh, I don't have anything to write about. Once you've got a blog and something set up, and you maybe write about a hack the box you did, or something maybe a conference you went to, or whatever it is. Once you've got one, you'll start writing things, and maybe you'll write about absolute nonsense like I do, and I'll give you some examples of that. But maybe you won't. Maybe you'll write some actual security stuff, and that'll work for you. I definitely recommend it. It's super useful, and yeah, you never know where that'll go. Second point, conferences. I mentioned these already before, so I won't dive into this, but go to those if you get a chance. Do that. It's good fun. The third, I would say, is build things. Play with tools. Even if you don't have the opportunity to do this during work hours, if you can, try and do it outside of hours. I spent a lot of time building and playing around with a bunch of different tools. One of them was Elasticstack. I spent time both in work and then out of work as well, but I really just fell in love with the tool. And I got to spend some time doing some really ridiculous things that with the application that I don't think they were ever expecting someone to do. And I've got two examples of that. I mean, the first one, before I was even in cybersecurity, I actually used Elasticstack and built a capture the flag where I taught people how to use Elasticstack using the capture the flag. So you would go through, you would create a dashboard, then you would create filters, and you would find flags along the way. And that was something that I built and I was a big fan of, and I actually took that and used that and submitted that to the meetup group here in Sydney, and we ran that as a CTF. And I've had a few people actually come up to me to this day that I'm friends with who came up to me originally and said, hey man, I saw you presented that thing on the Sec Talks meetup. I did that. It was my first time using Elasticstack and I really enjoyed it, and now I use it often. And so like that's really cool. And that was before I was even in cybersecurity. So like stuff like that really matters. And the other thing that I did with it is I played around with the Elasticstack and I made it manage my finances. I put a bunch of finance documentation in there, and then using Kibana, I actually was able to view all of that detail and create reports. So it was definitely a strange thing walking into an interview, and then someone said to me, hey, do you know anything about security tools? And I said, I do. I've used Elasticstack. And they were like, great. What did you use it for? And I'm like, to manage my finances. And then they were really confused. So stuff like that, it's fun. Why not? Get hands-on tools. A lot of this stuff is free, so you can play around with that. Fourth point kind of tails onto that. Use training providers. Use HackTheBox, use PortSwigger, use TryHackMe, use whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm not here to tell you which one to use. Find one that has content that you really like and that you really enjoy, and go ahead and use that. I definitely recommend it. There's so much out there now. Jump into this stuff and play around. There's a lot of information. 5, try to be more outgoing. This is a bit of a weird one. 5 and 6 kind of tie in quite well. But at conferences, put yourself out there and, try to test the limits of your safety bubble or your comfort zone, I guess. All it takes is meeting a couple of people, and those couple of people will introduce you to more people and like their friends, and who knows, by that point you'll end up meeting 50, 60 people by going to these conferences, and like those relationships don't happen overnight. You've got to build those, and that's something that I would recommend. Like, see if you can approach certain people, just talk to people, spark up a conversation. I would typically have labeled myself someone who's more introverted, and putting myself in those situations does make me a little bit uncomfortable, especially in conferences, meeting random people. But it's super useful, and like it's easier than it feels easier. It is easier than it seems, and so you just kind of have to do that a couple of times. Just meet some people. Hopefully you don't meet anyone terrible, and all you do is have positive experiences, so that way it reinforces that. But yeah, definitely recommend that. Meeting people is great. So you never know what will happen with that. Here's just some examples. Wrapping up here now. Here's some examples of some of the blogs that I've written. So I mentioned before the Elastic CTF. I wrote a blog about that. I wrote up as you can see, some of my blogs are security focused, some of them are not. I wrote up a blog about what I spent in 2020. This I tracked through the Elasticstack, or a tool that I call the Elastic Cache. And that's another blog there about tracking my finances in the Elasticstack. all these different things are just a real little fun thing, and they don't necessarily have to be tied to cybersecurity. At least for me, I just throw a bunch of stuff on there. But, you know, you'll find stuff to write about. I can guarantee it. Normally I would do a Q&A. However, obviously we're digital here. But if you've got any questions, either put them in, I have no idea where this is going to be posted, but put them where it is posted, and hopefully I will respond to them. If not, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or email or however you would like to contact me. I'm more than happy to answer questions, and we can go from there. And so this is just a final little thank you. There is a little QR code there on the screen here. That just goes to my blog. If you'd like to see more about what I'd been writing about. But that's the talk. Hopefully you took something out of that. Like I said, this is my little adventure into getting into pen testing and what was available for me after that. If you see me at a conference or something like that, come say hello. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and catch you around.